It's Brett with Indie Comics Dispatch and broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the Milky Way galaxy. This is Broadcast from the Dispatch.
If you got a story and you want the world to know it, if you think you ready and you ain't afraid to show it, throw your hands up high, yeah, we might stand out. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. And if you love some indie comics, let me hear you shout. Like, just stay tuned, what's the story? Had to get that every time a brand new indie comic from the Dispatch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Broadcast from the Dispatch. I'm very excited about this week's guest, but before we get there, let me do a couple quick reminders. If you're an indie comic creator, we want your press information about your project. We want you to send it to us at press@indiecomicsdispatch.com so that we can help promote your project through our website. Last month, the website got 7,000 visitors, all looking for indie comics to support and indie comic news to read. So if you're not sending us your information, you're missing out. Go to indiecomicsdispatch.com. You can click submit up at the top and submit your press release, and we will post that for you, and maybe even go a bit further, do an interview with you, maybe write a full article on it, depending upon what your project is and if it piques our interest or not. Number two, we have a Patreon. Down at the bottom of the screen there, you can see it at patreon.com/indiecomicsdispatch. You can go there and you can support the Dispatch for as little as $3 a month. With that, you get cool perks and rewards. So go there and check it out and see what all different tiers you can get and what rewards you can get with each level. I am very excited, like I said, about tonight's guest. He's been on the show once before when we did Afrofuturism, but big fan of his. And so my wife knew who was going to be on the show tonight. And she was like, "Are you going to fanboy on him?" I was like, No, I'm not going to totally geek out on him. So I'd like to welcome John Jennings to the show. John is a professor, author, graphic novelist, curator, Harvard fellow, New York Times bestseller, 2018 Eisner winner, and all-around champion of Black culture. John, welcome.
Thank you, Brett, for having me. I really appreciate it. I mean, if you want a fanboy, go ahead. I mean, that's mostly people around my house don't pay attention to me or care. So, it's
well, like, anytime you need a boost, just call me up and I'll tell you how much I love all your work.
So kind. Thank you.
In fact, you can see right over my shoulder back there one of your books. I can't figure out which
the Black Comics Returns book.
Yeah.
Bunch of stuff over there. Yeah. Like, I love that. Like, you can see behind me, there's like, you can tell I have a kid. Like, have all the things. We got the vacuum cleaner, everything.
So. I love it though, because every parent, I feel like we do. Every parent has that room of their house where they're just like, just put it in there. Like,
stuff it in there. Is that?
Where does that go? I don't know. Put it in the playroom.
Which is very indicative of like where I am, right? So it's like, oh, just stuff them in there. Anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So, John, I read your intro. It's a lot of information there. Tell us more about yourself. What is your origin story as a creator?
Well, let's see. I want to say that a lot of the impetus for the stuff that I do came from my mom. She was a literature. She was focusing on literature, English literature major at Alcorn State University, and she was really into all kinds of literature, and but also she was really into like a lot of speculative, I guess what we call speculative fiction now, so that includes like science fiction and horror, but she was also really into like murder mysteries and all kinds of stuff, and she basically kind of infused like a lot of storytelling in me, so to speak. Like, I started reading at an early age, and she really encouraged me to, go to the library a lot and all kinds of stuff like that. So I was always reading something. This is before video games and like MTV and everything, right? Because I was born in like 1970. So I lived in a library, I think I had like 3 library cards, one for like the city, one for Jackson, one for Florida, one for Jackson, one for Canton. Like, these are like the 3 major. Well, I grew up in Florida, Mississippi.
Okay.
And yeah, so I had like 3 library cards, and we would always, travel around like picking up books and stuff. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of it started. And my mom bought me my first comics. I was an avid reader of folk tales and superstitions and horror stories and sci-fi stuff. And my mom was a really big, or is still actually a really big consumer of like really, really inappropriate films. She loved like anything like schlocky B movies, lots of heads exploded. I mean, she was in all that stuff. It was like, yeah, she would watch all that stuff. It's a conspicuous consumption of, just the most lewd, crazy things. And she would share them with me. Like, she basically didn't have a filter. It's like, oh, let's talk about what we just watched though. So we have these conversations about like, yo, did you like that? Why'd you like, that kind of stuff. And I think what was tripped out about it was like when she bought me like stuff like the Mighty Thor and things like that, I saw a connection between like the mythology that I was reading, like Egyptian and Norse mythology and stuff, and I saw it reflected in the comics. And then, little did she know she was actually like, causing an obsession that I think, has led to me becoming, I mean, pretty much every aspect of what I do now is like comics related. It's kind of weird, so yeah. And that's kind of like that's and I started drawing at an early age and trying to make comics, but like a lot of people, I try to like mimic comics that I was into. Yeah, like I had a Daredevil analog called Devlin. That's pretty original, right?
Yeah.
Devlin.
That's good. I was going to ask you if you remembered one of your first creations. I love that.
Yeah, Devlin. Yeah, I had a character called the Panther. Guess who he was an analog of? He was maybe. Anyway, he was like Iron Man and Black Panther put together,
Nice.
Which is all,
I remembered a couple weeks ago, I drew comics. I'm a horrible artist, but I remembered had this like memory flashback of 5th grade. Me and a couple friends got together and started drawing comics, and my character was Electro Man, and he had a light bulb for a head. So
it's dope. See, I like that. See, that thing, comics are so real. You can do stuff like that. It totally makes sense. Of course, he'd have a light bulb. Hell, why wouldn't he? Right? Yeah, and so I think at first, like a lot of people, I think the first thing I tried to do was like Popeye. Actually, when I was in the 1st grade, I remember trying to make Popeye comic books because spinach and strength.
Yeah,
and then I think that the first time I really tried to make my own characters was probably in the like 6th or 7th grade. I started, and then I saw, I actually started to have ideas of my own that were still derivative because superheroes in particular are really derivative.
Right.
But yeah, so that's, and I stopped trying to make comics for a while because I thought that the things that I was making didn't look like what was in mainstream comics, what I thought, And the other thing too, and this is something I've been doing fairly recently, is shouting out this kid. Well, he's not a kid now. He probably is a grown man, hopefully. His name is Eduardo. I don't know where he is right now, but I owe him a lot. To a lot of people who are now used to, going to a comic book store, to your local comic book shop, before the direct market, which is like in the late 70s, you could just go to like a, convenience store or like corner shop or like a newsstand or like a gas station and pick up comics right on a spin rack, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened was, when the direct market happens, they take all those things out and they put them into like these specialty stores, which we call direct market. So all of a sudden I couldn't get comics anymore. And I was very sad, And then my uncle, Willie, who also started me drawing, was dating a woman, and her name was Alice, I think, but don't quote me on that. But I know her son, his name was Eduardo. And he lived in Jackson, Mississippi, which was the capital of Mississippi, which is, close by us. And he lived by a comic book store. And so he had all of these crazy comic books that I had never seen before from companies I had never heard of, like Malibu and like Eclipse and First Comics. I was like, who is E-Man and why is he awesome? That kind of stuff. So yeah, so that actually really started me thinking a lot more as I think about it now about comics as a medium and what's possible, I'm gonna stop talking because I feel like I'm still,
I love it. I love it because
I answering the first damn question,
Yeah.
So like,
but I have those memories too because my little town didn't have a comic store at first, so they did eventually, but not when I was a kid, really. And so I would walk down to the corner gas station and spin that spinner rack, and you bought whatever they had. Like there was no
Yep.
subscription. There wasn't. You may miss 2 or 3 issues in
You didn't even know
between.
like when you're gonna get the next issue.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
whatever happened to Spider-Man? I have no idea. Is he still alive?
exactly, exactly.
Did Doc Ock kill Spider-Man? I have no idea.
There's something cool about that, about not knowing. I mean, frustrating too, right? But cool about not knowing what you were going to find that week there,
Right.
and not knowing what gems you were going to pull from the spinner.
Exactly. Well, the other thing too is like so many of those comics got canceled in mid-runs and stuff too. You know, yeah, it was terrible. You know, so I guess for a certain degree, you know, the direct market is helped a lot of things for like streamlining things, but it also has its issues, as you know. So
yeah. Wow. So you've kind of answered why comics, but talk about
a little bit
we'll come back around. Don't worry.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about how you said you've set comics aside for a little while, and and you went on this path to be a graphic designer, I believe, right? And
that's correct.
You came back around. What was it that caused you to kind of come back around to your love of comics?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I want to say, like I always start. I mean, I was not trained as an illustrator. You know, I just love drawing. You know, I always had an aptitude for art. And when I went to undergrad at Jackson State University, it's HBCU in Mississippi, I decided to study the great granddaddy of graphic design. They call it commercial art. So it's like commercial art and a minor in drawing, right? And and so I worked for the school newspaper, the Blue and White Flash, and I ended up getting an internship at the local newspaper, you know, the Clarion Ledger, which is kind of like, which is the biggest paper in Mississippi. So I was working in my field, like right out of school, which is really cool. And then what happened was, I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to get more education, and I got an opportunity to go to U of I and to get a master's in art education, right? Now, all along, I was still in love with comics. And it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe I can be comics adjacent. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think I can, no one's gonna let me draw Spider-Man because I just draw these weird, like cartoony figures or whatever, right? And you know, so I was like, okay, well, maybe I can just teach kids art or something. So I actually ended up going to going to University of Illinois, which is a research one institution. While there, I fell in love with graphic design. So I was like, oh, you know, maybe I could segue into doing graphic design. So this is like, you know, in the early 90s, this was like 93, something like that. So this is a point in time where like there's a segue between like analog, you know, art making, like, you know, and Photoshop, you know, like learning digital stuff, you know, and all the people who had learned the traditional processes were just laughing at the Macintosh. They're like, oh, this little box. Oh, yeah. Little did you know that you was about to be on top of a revolution. I remember like looking through some of the design magazines, and like you'd have like a what do you call it, an advertisement for colored pencils, you know, like design markers and stuff like that, next to like this new thing called Adobe Photoshop. You know what I'm saying? It's really weird. So so I ended up getting my master's of fine arts, which is terminal degree in studio, and you know, with a focus on graphic design. Now, while I was in grad school, all the time I was just drawing comics. I was still doing. I actually was my first foray into publishing a newspaper. Me and my friends Jamal and Shayla Matuka, we started a free like Afrocentric newspaper called Black Thought. We named it after the rapper, you know, after the MC from the Roots. Yeah. And it was totally free. So I was actually publishing and then writing about comics and making comics and doing, you know, layout and stuff like that, just because. And this is around the same time that Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics came out. And so what started happening is like, ooh, comics became kind of like intellectual and chic. And this is actually around the same time that Mouse wins the Pulitzer Prize, right? Like in the 90s, right? And it's also around the same time that Sandman it's chic, it's so in, and you know, it wins the World Fantasy Award. Ooh, you know, that kind of stuff. Of course, they subsequently changed the you know, so that it couldn't win anymore. It's really fun. So I say all that to say is like my professors then pushed me into doing a thesis based on comics. And that's what kind of rekindled my interest in like comics as a medium, you know. And then I went back to Jackson State and started a graphic design program pretty much, you know, and then taught there for 4 years. And then I went back to University of Illinois. And when I was there, you know, looking for tenure, I became really interested in like different types of media publishing, you know. This is around the time that this thing called printing on demand started, right? With this company called Lulu. It was the first like major one. I was
Yeah,
like,
I remember Lulu. Yeah.
and I was like, yo, and that's still around, of course.
Yeah.
But not everybody's doing printing on demand now. But at the time, it was really innovative. And I was like, let me get this straight. Because I was thinking about doing some stupid stuff, like making a comic book and putting it on a CD. Remember when Marvel put out all those CD-ROMs of all their comics?
Yep.
I was like, this is insanity.
It is, and it was so stupid.
I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this a thing? Well, you know, it's funny too, because the University of Illinois, just as an aside, has the largest repository of laser discs, I think, in the country. Because somebody in the library over there thought that laser disc was going to be it. That's it. These giant silver like records. Anyway, so but I digress. Anyway, so so Lulu actually is a thing that made me started making comics again, because I was like, I can actually do whatever I want. I can actually put this out and make money if I wanted to. And you know, I'm a designer. I can actually lay out a book, you know. So yeah, it was easy. So that's kind of what started. And I met Dan Duffy like it was like 16, 17 years ago. And at the time, Damien was, I think he had just got out of undergrad. He was working for the school library, for the law library. We became really good friends, and he then went to grad school and stuff. And what's funny about it is like the law library was right across from where I worked. So we would hang out like constantly and talk comics and stuff. And before you know it, we were making comics together. And then we started curating books and stuff together. And then we started doing art shows. And we were doing like some really experimental, crazy comics. Like we were doing like virtual comics and stuff. We were like doing gallery comics, you know. Yeah, like our first major art show was a gallery comic show that I think was in Wisconsin maybe or something. Scott McCloud and like Art Spiegelman were in that show. You know, I think that it might have been at Bowling Green or something like that. But it was like our first major show. It was pretty cool. So yeah, so we just started working together, and before you know it, you know, we were, you know, just, you know, like peas and carrots, you know. So yeah.
What was your first book together? Was it Out of Sequence or?
Our first book together was this graphic novel called The Hole, actually.
Oh yeah, I got that one.
The Hole.
There.
Yeah, The Hole is crazy. It's a crazy book. It's kind of out of print. We actually own like most of it. But anyway, The Hole, you know, it's like this kind of horror satire book. It was a book that I did. So this is the thing. The other thing too is like the first version of the Hole is actually a white character named Eric.
Oh really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. They actually race bet my own character. Yeah, people don't realize it. Yeah, because I was like, well, I wanted to be known for, you know, being a great cartoonist, right? You know, and so I went through that phase. Then I realized like how underrepresented Black folk were in comics, and I was like, I'm an idiot. Like I need to make more Black characters. What is wrong with me? So yeah, and so that's what happened is when we teamed up with Damien. When I teamed with Damien, and Damien, you know, is like 10 years younger than me, white Irish cat, you know, from you know, brother from another mother, you know, from you know the Chicago suburbs. And we just like really hit it off. We had a lot of stuff in common. The way we thought about comics was like pretty spot on. Damien's a great writer. And the other thing too is he's a really talented letterer. Like he letters pretty much everything that we do too.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't realize that. But
I feel like lettering is the most underappreciated art in comics because you don't realize you need a good letterer until you don't have a good letterer.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, yo, this is terribly lettered. Like he basically like took one of my pages from like The Hole and he sent it back to me like re-lettered. I was like, oh my God, this is so much better. It was so much better. And he was like, I don't want to insult you, but you know, this is what I would do, you know. And I think what it was, it actually they kind of solidified us. Like we were working on a book together. Actually, we were working on this book called Urban Creep as well too. It was kind of like a hip hop Twilight Zone idea that we were working on. It was an anthology series, and there was this character that was a pimp character actually. And you know, Damien he wrote him saying the N-word, right? And he trepidatiously gave it to me. And I was like, yo, this script is amazing. He's like, nothing bothered you? I was like, no, that character would say that word. You know, he would actually. So yeah, totally fine. Yeah, so since then, we've just been working on stuff together including the Black comics books, like the one behind you there. So, yeah.
Which you can still get, I think, right? Those are still in print.
They're still in print for now, actually.
Okay.
I was just informed that they are about to sell out the first edition. Yeah, so we are now in talks to do a second edition. Well, no, to do a soft cover.
Okay.
Yeah, the soft cover is probably gonna be a little bit smaller and soft cover. So yeah, so now those hard covers are going to be probably worth some money. As you know, the first one is totally out of print.
Yeah, and totally expensive. If you happen to find a copy on eBay, be prepared to spend some money on it.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because that company is out of business.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. That's the other thing too. Is like our first two books, like both the companies that published us went out of business. It's like the J2D2 curse. We call ourselves J2D2, by the way. John Jennings. Yep. Yeah, so that's. Damien created this really cool like logo bot. It was pretty cool.
I think I've seen it somewhere. It may be on the whole. Was it maybe on the whole?
Or he has a website up too where he still has it on there. So
yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of like how we started working together on things. But we started out as curators, and I think you mentioned Out of Sequence earlier, right? Yeah, so Out of Sequence probably came out around the same time as the whole. So Out of Sequence was an art show that we did back in 2008, something like that. And it was inspired by the Hammer art. The Hammer Museum put out this show called the Masters of American Comics. And it was 15 artists. All of them were men, first of all. Most of them were white men, and actually we thought that all of them were, but then we realized George Harriman actually was passing. Later on. So yeah, because he's actually from Louisiana, is actually a man of color. And but there was no like Scott McCloud wasn't even in that show. So it was like this weird like, amalgam. It's a great show, but it also was like very limited as far as like who was in the show, And so that's what actually prompted us to do to pitch Out of Sequence to the Credit Art Museum. Yeah. That's really cool. So we wanted to open up the dialogue about who was doing comics and what kind of comics they're making. And then it was really funny. Excuse me. I guess I'm getting over whatever ick my son gave me. So we pitched the show to the Credit Art Museum. We had all these charts and like graphs, and we had these arguments. Like, this is what comics is, and comics are art, and this is why. So about 15 minutes into the pitch, they'll say, okay, we want to do it. You need like 2.5 years? You think that's long enough? And we're like, wait, we still haven't talked. Wait, what? Did you just say yes? So we got a major show at this like really awesome like gallery that's at museum at U of I. And I often say like if that show had been in New York or like California somewhere, it would have been much more known. But it was a massive show. It was very well curated, I think, and it's you probably have a copy of the catalog, right? Knowing you.
Yes, I do. I do.
Yeah, I designed that. So what was really cool about that show and about that catalog is like they hired architects to design the show based off of our catalog. So the whole thing with the blue lines and stuff in the catalog, they actually took that and actually put that on the walls. It was crazy. Oh, wow. So it was it was a big deal. It was like so wonderful, and that's kind of like what started us as curators. And then while we were getting ready for that show, we curated another show at Jackson State because we needed a practice show because we realized that we had never curated a show before. So we're gonna do a small show with like not a lot of artists. That ended up becoming like a bunch of artists, and yeah, we self-published a book called Other Heroes, that actually goes with the show. And that's kind of like where we started thinking about African-American independent artists, right? And then that led into us doing like comics. Yep. Because we'd already had those contacts and stuff. So I literally like went to ECBAC, in Philadelphia to, scout around for artwork. And that was the first time I actually, because, we were on, the Museum of Black Superheroes back in the day, Omar Bilal started. And shout out to Omar. And that's kind of like where we started, like thinking about this culture and then actually becoming a part of the culture, so yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So, why do you think comics on people like you, people like me, on a lot of people, particularly in American culture at least, but it seems to be a worldwide thing? Why do you think comics have such a hold on people's imaginations and we just don't outgrow them? What something that's seen as a childish hobby um, persists?
And I think you said the right word, Brett. I think it is about the imagination. I think that comics have this. They're very direct, and they have like this. They're ingenious because you're merging like text and image together. So you have these two different modes of talking and thinking together.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that they're very surreal, right? Very surreal. Like for instance, if you and I were having like dinner, right, at a taco shop or something, and this guy in a purple rabbit suit comes up to us, we'd be like, yo, what is wrong with this dude? He is insane. Like, this guy's in a purple rabbit suit. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? But in a comic book, if that happens, a purple guy or like a purple rabbit comes up and sits down with us, we're like, oh, how you doing, Fred?
Right.
Right? Totally different thing. Because it's a comic book. You can have Fred the purple rabbit and no one thinks anything about it. You can have a character called the Flaming Carrot, for God's sake, and everybody's like, yeah, why not? Or a character like Hellboy. Hellboy, really?
Yeah.
That would never, what I'm saying? So it's like this inherent, like weird, like it's almost like a constant fugue state when you're like reading a comic. It's like, this is the oddest thing. And I think comics should be strange, by the way. I'm really about like, I mean, I love biographical comics and all that, but I'm really into like odd, strange comics, because it's a strange medium, and I think it's inherently surreal. So I think that's what it attracts me, because it's just anything is possible. The other thing is that there's a very, very low kind of like border for getting into comics. Excuse me, I should have got some water. Sorry.
You're good.
There's anybody can get into comics now. And you can basically just excuse me, oh my God, sick. So you can basically take a piece of paper and draw something and then copy it, and you can make a comic publisher. Excuse me. So you talked to me with your water glass.
I did. I thought about that as I picked up. I was like, oh man.
Like, I ain't got no water. Oh my God.
Will you take a minute?
Yeah.
In fact, now is a great time for me to remind everybody out there watching that if you're watching this, you can drop questions or comments in the comment section of whatever social media channel you're watching. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, so feel free to use the comment sections there, and we will try to address any comments or questions you have. Also, sharing is caring. If you shared this feed, if you're on Facebook, share it to your profile, share it to any groups you may be a part of. Help us reach more people and get a broader audience by just sharing this feed. All you got to do is 2 clicks, share now, boom, it's done. And you've helped the Dispatch and you've helped John Jennings. Remember that. You're not just helping Brett, you're helping John here.
Oh, man. That's awesome. Help me, because I need help.
Well, let's take a turn, because we've gone here and there. You and Dr. Duffy, though, Damien, have had the opportunity recently now to adapt 2 of Octavia Butler's novels into graphic novels.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about that experience and how that came about. And I can't even imagine trying to tackle something like that. What was that like? What was that process?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's daunting, extremely daunting. Yeah, so just a kind of a backstory about it. So the first time that someone was trying to do an Octavia Butler adaptation was Beacon Press. Beacon Press, actually, I think they still own the rights to Kindred, actually. Like, I think they still publish it. Everything else is at other spaces, but Kindred is the book that Beacon Press has. So they actually wanted to do a black and white, way shorter adaptation, actually, of Kindred. And I'd never done a book like that before. So they sent out a call entries. And at the time I was still teaching at University of Illinois. It was right before spring break. I remember this like yesterday. Damien was like, yo, guess what? Beacon Press wants like submissions for this, for Kindred. And I'm like, a graphic novel of Kindred? What? And but the deadline was like in a couple of weeks. So we would have to actually like he would have to write a script like immediately, like shorts. It was like a 16-page script or something like that. It was just like a sample, and I would have to draw it. But the thing was, I had speaking engagements all that week of spring break, and I was speaking in different parts of the country. So what I did was actually like draw pieces of it analog, mail it back to Illinois via FedEx, whatever town I was in. I think I was in Boston. I was in like all over the country. And then what he would do was like go down to the Kinko's and like scan it in and then assemble a page out of the pieces that I sent him. Right.
wow.
Because I was just drawing images and just send them back. And so we got in right under the wire, and we were very excited. And we totally did not get that particular, contract. we were so hurt. 3 years later, we've totally forgotten about that. And we're looking forward to reading whoever's version of it came out. But, it didn't come out at this particular point. So it's like 2012. We're trying to get other things published. I think we're at Comic-Con speaking about the first Black comics book, actually. And what ended up happening was Damien was on his way. I hit the ground first. I was actually on the floor at San Diego Comic-Con, and I had like 3 or 4 projects that we were working on together and some that I was doing. And I was just kind of showing people my work on my iPad, And I went to Abrams, and at the time, Sheila Keenan, who was our editor, was a wonderful, wonderful woman, wonderful editor who took a chance on us, who liked my work. And she was like, oh my God, I really love your work, and I like what you're doing. You might be perfect for this project that I'm working on, Have you ever heard of Octavia Butler? And I was like, yes, I have actually. What book are you trying to do? And she said, Kindred. And I was like, Kindred? Wait. And then I remember that the other book had never come out for whatever reason, right? And then what happened was, we really hit it off. And Damien came later, and I told him about what had happened. I said, yeah, this editor at Abrams that said that they're trying to do Kindred, and we might be actually have a shot at doing the book. And he's like, Kindred? He's like, what? Yeah. And then we saw Sheila, like, it seems like we kept bumping into her, like it was this crazy omen. And then, so we sent in samples. She contacted us pretty readily. And then about 5 months later, we were signing a contract to do Kindred. Wow. And it was very daunting. We had never done something so large before. Damien will say that he wrote a horrible first draft of a script, and because he didn't want to touch Octavia Butler's words. So he wrote a book that basically you would have had to have read the original book to even understand this book. It was like meta Kindred, And Sheila was like, no, you can't, no. And so it worked out, but yeah, I injured my shoulder drawing it.
Wow.
It was all done in Sharpie, because I wanted to use like a medium that was really difficult to work with, and it's very immediate. I didn't do any editing. Whatever hit the page is what I went with. That's why it has this kind of strange, like weird, like cartoony, primal thing. And it was just me. Sometimes I'll just be like, like making images, So it's over 700 drawings actually.
Wow.
Yeah, it's over 700 drawings. There was points where I was just totally, there was a lot of times where I don't remember making pages. It was crazy. And, it was, I was drawing with like Sharpies. So I'd be drawing and my studio would smell like, Sharpie films. And my wife would come in and be like, 3 o'clock in the morning, go to bed. And I'm like, which one of y'all said that? It's like 3 of them. Like, go to bed. She just come in like, turn off the light. It's time to go to bed. 3:20 in the morning.
Your time traveling after all that Sharpie.
It was ridiculous, man. So so then what happened, we were shocked that more people liked it than didn't like it. So that was, we just wanted people to not hate us. That was our our benchmark. Like, please don't hate us. Because I often say, like, the Bayhive, Beyonce's, followers are pretty bad, but Octavia is not. Ain't got nothing on top of Octavia Butler's fan club. It's crazy out there. They were going to hurt us if we messed up anything. But luckily, her family and her remaining family and her estate were very pleased. The book debuted at #1 on the New York Times Bestsellers list. Sold many copies. Still sells many copies, which is awesome. And then we got a chance to do a second. So actually, we got a 2-book deal. We actually are doing Parable of the Talents. Like, that's my next book. So and that's kind of how that went. But it was very hard. And I think Damon did a great job of like adapting a book. I think he read Kindred like 14 times. It's nuts, But Parable is excellent. Like, I don't, the Parable, like the script for it is ridiculous. Like, we didn't win, but we were like nominated for like best adaptation for the Eisner again, and now we're up for a Hugo Award. Up against some really stiff competition, but it's really, I don't know. It feels great that people, first of all, don't hate us, and then are really kind of into what we've been doing with characters. So that's because we do a lot of time and thought into it.
So you mentioned drawing Kindred in Sharpie. I think you've transitioned off of physical artwork, haven't you? And
Yes.
you're all digital now.
I'm all digital because I use the iPad. I really do. Actually, I have 2 iPads. I have two like the iPad Pros, and I use Procreate. And I picked this up from like photographers. How like a photographer will like charge up a flash and then they'll switch it out, or charge up a camera and switch it out, or they'll run out of film and they'll switch out the camera, that kind of thing. So while one is charging, I'm using the other, and I switch them out. And I use Dropbox as a mediation,
as a go-between.
Yeah,
Very cool.
And so depending upon where I am, that way I'm always sharing. Because if I'm in the middle of a page and my iPad's about to die, then I can just share it, download it to the other one, keep going.
Smart.
I mean, deadlines make you smart. So like, it's not me. I'm like, how do I not miss this deadline?
Somebody who I know still draws physical. Keithan Jones says, "What's up, John?"
What's up, man? Keithan's good folk, man.
He's been on the show.
He just did a dope like hardware that he just threw up the other day. I was like,
yeah, I did his interpretation. It's so good. So
I
good.
did one too, and I was like, mine looks so lame now because this is so dynamic and awesome. Anyway, it was really great.
Keithan's awesome. And then Brian Lambert from Wingless Comments in the comment section on Instagram says, "Do you think the streaming wars will help independent creators and their IPs in any tangible way?"
Yes. Yeah, I think so, because any medium needs to be filled. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. And there's only so much content to go around. I mean, I think that's a good question, but I think it's apparent that, if this keeps going, IP is king, so getting stuff out and getting stuff done. I mean, I even have, I can't really talk about it, but I have one of my properties has been optioned,
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't been announced yet, but yeah. And yes, that's an exciting time, but I think definitely it's the leveling of the playing field. What happens is, technology, if you have access to it, it makes things a lot more accessible. It shakes things up. I mean, honestly, like the institutions like publishing and filmmaking and stuff, the reason why they're so, entrenched in things is just because they're old and they've just been around first, so they've been able to stack cash, been able to, push people out. They've been able to do things that they're not able to do anymore, because, you can't control all the different tributaries, So I think that the streaming piece definitely, if you have a piece out that, someone's going to be clacking for it,
We're seeing that a little bit already with some indie creators. Tyler Martin and from Godhood Comics just recently announced that his series The Antagonist got optioned.
You read my mind.
Yep.
And of course, like Stranger Comics is a big one too, right?
Oh yeah. And they have the deal. Sebastian has a deal with HBO. So yeah, and they have another Kickstarter coming up as well.
Yes, they do. And I need to respond.
That's going to be massive.
That book It looks beautiful. It's
It
ridiculous.
does.
There's so many
Everything he
talented
does.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's top notch.
So let's go back to you worked with Abrams for the Octavia Butler books, and then somehow, somewhere along the way, you got to curate your own line of novels, the Megascope line of graphic novels. So tell us how that happened.
Well, so it happened over dinner. A lot of people don't realize if you're at a conference, you know, a Comic-Con or whatever, a lot of business goes down like over drinks or dinner for real. So I was actually at the American Library Association conference, and Abrams, they always have this thing called a family dinner where like basically whatever artists or writers or editors are there that they work with, everybody just goes out to dinner. And so I was talking to Andrew Smith, who is the publisher of you know, for Abrams Comic Arts and for other imprints, and we're just discussing, you know, basically Black speculative culture and how like it was basically becoming like mainstream. I mean, it's a really strange thing right now. I mean, you've seen it, Brett. It's like, have you ever seen anything like this where it's like I feel like every media outlet, you know, either like Black speculative culture has become like a mainstream piece, and and I think if this continues, which it probably will, because we actually have all these people, you know, celebrities and stuff with, you know, publishing deals and you know, first look deals with large companies and stuff. They have to fill those things up. You know, they're on the hunt for stuff. So it's a very strange, and the more that those particular things become institutionalized, the more mainstream it becomes. You know, I mean, like, I think Afrofuturism now is headed the way that like hip hop was.
Yeah.
It went from like this really independent, like grassroots thing, and then it became a global phenomenon, and that's where we are right now. We're at the global phenomenon stage, you know. So when I was talking about this, I was like, well, I would love to do some more books like this, you know. And he's like, well, just let us know, you know, let us know like whatever books you want us to try to acquire, and we could adapt and we could do it. And I was like, well, I was thinking about original content. And he's like, oh, well, that sounds like an imprint. And I was like, oh,
okay.
It certainly does. I'm like, yes, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. So I sent in like 2 pages of like a pitch to them. He's like, send me something. Let's look at it, you know. And so I sent him like 2 pages of like what I thought Megascope would be, right? And I got the name from a W.E.B. Du Bois short story called The Princess Steel. The Megascope is a device that Du Bois created to frame this science fiction story about. It's crazy. Anyway, so it's brilliant. But it's a device that can see through time and space that that Du Bois created, you know, for this science fiction story that was written in 1909, for God's sake.
Wow. Yeah.
So then he was like, okay, this looks great. What kind of books would you do? And I was like, oh, I'm glad you asked. I was like, here's my vision, you know. So it went from like a 2-page pitch to like a 15-page treatise on that. Wow. And they liked it. They liked the numbers on it. And that's how Megascope was born. And now, like 4 books later, in the middle of a pandemic, you know, we're still picking up books. It's been hard because, you know, the numbers have to match up, you know. Trade publishing is very, very slow. It's a lot slower than I thought. It's about as slow as academic publishing in some ways.
Oh, wow.
Because there's so many people have to sign off on things. You know, it's a lot of people who are saying yay and nay, you know, and some stuff gets shot down, or we have to take it back and edit it. You know, it's you gotta be very patient, you know. And so, but I've been able to push through about 15 or so books, like, you know. But and the other thing too is we're only doing 2 books per season, so we're about like we're into like 2023 now, 24 now. You know, as far as like picked up, but we picked up a bunch of books. Some are late actually, and have to be reshuffled. Actually, I just found out again another book today is gonna be late.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh no, you know. But you know, the books are getting done. It's just that you know, making graphic novels is hard. So and these are long form graphic novels. Like we don't do floppies. They're all like hardcover, you know. But this, like, Across the Tracks, is probably the shortest book that we have. And it's like 60 some pages. And it's because we wanted to get it out by the
anniversary.
But our first book, this is a 128-page graphic novel, you know. And they all get soft covers. That's the other thing too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a hardcover soft cover deal. And
nice.
They're very lovely books.
So you have After the Rain, you have
Yes.
Black Star, Hard
Yep.
Ears, and Across the Tracks. What are the next ones that come out? Can you tell us yet, or is that?
Yeah, because we announced we announced a whole list. Actually, I can tell you. Let me go to my listy list. I don't know what's coming out next, actually, because we've shuffled around stuff so much. Because we're doing a book about the Emmett Till murder. There is a it's called Dark Fear. It's with Eric Battle as the artist, and Chris Benson's the writer. Chris Benson actually wrote the definitive book on the Emmett Till case with Emmett Till Mobley. So it's beautiful. Like the artwork is ridiculously good. It's Eric Battle. So Count of Monte Cristo book. It's called The Last Count of Monte Cristo. Ayize Jemai Everett is the writer. The artist is Tristan Roach out of Barbados. It is gorgeous. It's looking gorgeous. It's set 400 years after the polar ice caps melt. So it's still a pirate story, but it's like wind power and solar. It's like solar punk, like Afrofuturist Count of Monte Cristo off the coast of Africa. It's dope. We're getting ready to pick up a Anansi the Spider-inspired horror story.
Oh, wow.
Came out of my noggin that I pitched to Jasmine Joyner and Anthony Pugh. It's called The Story Eater.
Oh, wow.
Quite terrifying, actually. And then let's see. We're also getting ready to pick up. Oh, you know what? Actually, I can't talk about this one because we're still in negotiation. Dang it. We're doing a adaptation of The Middle Passage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by Charles Johnson. Reginald Hudlin is the adapter.
Oh, wow.
And the artist is Dennis Cowan.
Oh, wow.
With an intro by Henry Louis Gates Jr. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, just some medium names there. Nobody big. Yeah.
Chuck Collins and Baba Malik. What is Malik's last name? I can't remember. I just call him Baba Malik. And Daniel Jose Older. They're on a book called Death's Day, which is like, oh my God, it's like this urban, how do you call it? Urban fantasy, sci-fi, like buddy cop adventure story. It's hilarious and it's over the top and crazy. And you've seen Chuck Collins' work, so it looks like that. So it's like, yeah, very animated and beautiful. So those are some of the things we're doing.
Wow. I'm so glad you're only releasing 2 a season, or else I would just be broke.
Yeah, I'll be broke. Exactly. Natasha Womack's writing one for us. It's called Black Cube, actually. It's about these 2 ancient Egyptian gods who become curators of an interdimensional art gallery. So
cool.
Yes. It's super Afrofuturist. Tana Tucker is the artist on it. It's going to be dope. The Keeper. Oh my goodness. Stephen Barnes and Tananarive Due. Right? Writing a coming of age story set in Detroit about a young woman named Aisha who's protected by this weird like shadow insect thing. It's Marco Finnegan is the artist on it. It's coming along really nicely. So we're doing a few things,
Wow.
Yeah, but it's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. Oh, the Eightfold Path is our next book. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, Eightfold Path is like, it's drawn by Brian Christopher Moss's work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Brian Christopher Moss is the artist on it.
Wow.
It's written by Charles Johnson and Stephen Barnes. And imagine Afrofuturist, Buddhist cannabis tales, but told through the lens of like EC Comics or like Twilight Zone, but for adults. So basically it's like eight travelers. They get caught in a snowstorm on their way to Tibet, and they end up sharing stories, like in the Canterbury Tales. But each one of the stories is part of the path to the Eightfold Path of Enlightenment. Oh, wow. So it's a way to teach. Yeah, so it literally is a way to learn Buddhism, and they're raunchy as hell. So it's like they're written very much like those old school, like 1950s morality tale, like EC Comics kind of style, but drawn in this kind of funky zine, like highly expressive style that it's one of the wildest things,
That's awesome.
I love it, actually. So
Robert Roach says, you're dropping stupid names and projects now, man. Talking about gonna be broke. Big ups to you and Megascope.
Thank you, man.
Keith and drop. John's work exposes literature that's more secular to a mainstream audience. I feel it expands the criteria of graphic novels. His and Damien Duffy's Eisner Awards nominee is well deserved.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, we're just
So
we're
so
definitely trying to push the medium, you know. So
yeah. Well, which is one reason why I mean, as I came into your work as a Gerald Boney wants to know any word on more of the whole.
okay, you know what? We talk about this often, man. Yeah, so basically, yeah, we always talk about the whole, you know. And Damien's like, yo, someone pay me to do the rest of the whole and let's do it. I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of relaunch it, like a soft relaunch. You know, we've had, because I'm thinking like the whole is like really cerebral and insane, right? I mean, it's been compared to like so many really abstract things like, like the Wasteland and Dahlgren and all kinds of weirdness, right? It's because it's like the strange, very meta thing. I was like, and we were trying to push the envelope, like we want to make a graphic novel that matters, right? And I think we did, but it's a cult classic, and it's like this odd, and it ends in this weird way, and so I want to do. I think now's the time to do more of it, but trying to get Damien on board to do it. You know, we got so much stuff. I mean, like our next book that we're pitching is Night Boy, actually. So it's me, him, and Stacey Robinson. I'm doing colors, and Damien's writing, and Stacey's doing the art. So hopefully that'll get picked up somewhere. But I don't know. I mean, I would love to do it. When I did the Canyon White colored, he drew the whole, and I colored it, and I was like, people were like, yo, love this character. You know, I was like, we got to do more of the whole. So I don't know, we'll see. But I think, you know, doing like a soft relaunch of him, or like another with just a little less esoterica could be kind of more like, you know what I'm saying, like more like Shadow Man-ish or like Spawnish.
Totally, I gotta reread it because I don't remember the ending. You said it ended in a weird way, and I don't remember the ending.
Yeah, because it was supposed to, well, the thing about the whole, it was supposed to be one big book, but when we started working on it, we realized that it was too big for us to finish. And so I think one of us was watching Kill Bill at the time. I said, oh, we should Kill Bill it.
Part 2.
We should Kill Bill it. Yeah, and that's what happened. That's how I broke into 2. Yep. I don't know. It deserves to be finished, but I don't know when it will be finished. So
Gerald, just keep pestering him, and we'll see what happens. It sounds like we got to get Dr. Duffy on board too.
Dr. Duffy, you know, but it's you know, basically what's going to have to happen is they're going to have to get a contract for the whole. But it's such a strange book. Can you imagine like a mainstream publisher picking it up?
No. In fact, I was just sitting here thinking, like, you know, what would the whole look like as a like HBO Max series? And I'm not sure. If you've not read the whole, you have no idea what we're talking about. Google the whole after this, and just see John's art of it.
It's insane. it's oh, by the way, we had such a crazy deadline on that. Half of that book is a 180-page book. Half that book was drawn in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was not sleeping at all. Again, it was just like me just drawing like a maniac constantly. And
right.
Ridiculous. I was having hallucinations. It was, bad.
Well, let's switch back to Megascope real quick and tell everybody, because we are approaching towards the end of the show here. Tell everybody where they can get these books at. Oh,
this is what I love to say, like wherever fine books are sold, right? So basically, like a little bit of history of the company. So Abrams is not a comic book publisher, actually, until fairly. It's not. They started out as a art book publisher in the 1940s. By this guy named Harry N. Abrams. That's where the name comes from. It's funny when I say people, I have an imprint with Abrams. Oh, J.J. Abrams? It's like, no, not J.J. Abrams. Harry N. Abrams. He started a company that specialized in publishing art books, right? So like books about Picasso, Cezanne, Rodin, you know. He did a lot of stuff for like museums and stuff. Then I want to say like the mid 80s, they started doing pop culture stuff. And they had a really successful Disney book to put out, and they started, you know, diversifying, right? So Abrams Comic Arts has been around, so, you know, about a decade now. It started by this gentleman named Charlie Cochran. Charlie is the editor on the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, right?
My kids love those books.
As everybody, do you know how many? For real, like Jeff Kinney, like thank you, Jeff Kinney. He keeps the lights on because that book has sold 250 million copies.
Wow.
Worldwide, and it's many, many copies of it, right? So yeah, he has his own con.
No.
Yep. I think it's in his hometown. He has a tour bus. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what happens when you but I've never met him, but I hear he's like one of the sweetest people. And him and Charlie always, traveling, talking about the book. But yeah, so because of that type of reach, we are everywhere. So you can order us at a comic book store. You can go to Amazon and find the books. Mm-hmm. Anywhere that you buy a book, you can, if it's not there, you can order it, because it's distributed internationally. So, mm-hmm. And also digitally, so Comixology, anywhere that you can buy a book, you can buy Megascope books. The distribution is ubiquitous. So yeah, we just need people to know what we're doing. That's the thing, is like, it's one of the inspirations for doing something like this was Vertigo, and also Milestone Media.
I can see that.
Of course. And also my whole thing about the way I'm thinking about curatorial work is like, I'm thinking about like as Keaton said, the kind of literary aspects of doing things like this, like a Vertigo. Mm-hmm. Like Kim Berger is one of my heroes. I got a chance to meet her, and I'm like, oh my God, I love you so much. But also with a Def Jam Records kind of vibe to it, where everybody's dope, everybody on the track is dope, that kind of thing. So it has that kind of like edge to it. So you get this weird like esoteric strangeness, like Eightfold Path. But then we also working with Sean Martin, bro. He's doing a book with us too. So or like a Dennis Cowan, who's like legendary. Him and Reginald. So you have people that have been in comics for a while. You have people who have stories that they want to tell, and they're trying to get stuff out. But we focus primarily on people of color stories, very diverse. So, and our primary focus is speculative fiction. So that's science fiction, horror, fantasy, anything. If it's weird and it's not real, then we're going to probably
it's speculative fiction.
Speculative fiction. But we also do crime fiction. Like, Sean's book is a crime fiction book. We also are picking up a book that's about Stephanie St. Clair, the godmother of Harlem Bumpy Johnson's, mentor, and books like that. So, but we also doing some historical fiction, like the Dark Fear book, or like Across the Tracks. So, but those are minority. Like mostly those like big explosions, aliens, Afrofuturism, Black horror. Yeah. So, and we do have more of an educational bent too. Like we actually have a advisory board that's filled with people who are like, brilliant scholars. So, yep.
That's awesome. Marcus Roberts says very inspirational.
Thank you.
I have all the books, and I got to tell you guys out there watching, they are all amazing. Like the I wasn't sure what to expect, if they were all going to be fairly similar or what, but you're right. They just cover the gamut and are just each their own masterpiece. It's very well curated, very well put together. I love them
really
so
hard
far.
On like trying to come up with like scenarios that I think it's tricky, because you have to basically the process. Just so I know you didn't ask me about this, but it's difficult. So I'll put together a pitch, or someone will send me a pitch, and I'll lay it out, put together creative teams, and I'll take it to Abrams, and then it goes to what they call editorial board, right? And that's pretty much like all the editors at Abrams, and they vote it up or down. And they'll question it and say, okay, well, why we want to publish this book? Is this a good pitch? That kind of stuff. They might bring me back notes, like I just got some notes back on some pitches, or it goes forward to what they call the publication board, which is like all the muckety mucks. So that's like CEO, VPs, and I have to literally like, present to like the CEO of the company, like, this is why we should do this book. And from there, then we'll make an offer to the teams.
Matthew Clark and Nigel Lynch are two amazing people. I love them.
Yeah, I'm actually, I want to definitely continue working with them. I love their work so much. So yeah, a couple of things that me and Matthew want to get into, actually. So in particular, let's see what else is coming out. I got Dead Stay. I think I did tell you. Oh, The Resurrectionist. Oh my God, I'm crazy. Yo, The Resurrectionists, Hoche Anderson and Jeremy Love on one book
Wow.
together.
Mm.
I know, right? Imagine like turn of the century. How do I even explain this? It's like no, you know what? I can't even explain it. It's about this young woman who ends up with these grave robbers, and then she realizes that she can literally bring back people from the dead, not people from her own family.
Wow.
And there's this kind of crazy like conspiracy, and it's set like in like turn of the century New York. So imagine something like the what's the show about the guy who's like a detective? Oh my God, what's the name of it? I forgot the name of it. I'm totally spacing on it right now.
No idea.
But it's crazy, yeah, because the guy who plays Lauren Zemo, the lead dude, I forget the name of it. You know the show I'm talking about.
I think so now, yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like A&E, or like it's turn of century crime story, but it's before there was like profilers, you know. Never mind. Doesn't matter. But anyway, but it's like that, but with magic. So
that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You just have so many cool things coming out.
That's coming out of like you know, Hoche Anderson's mind. That's not me. It's just like I just say like, yo, that sounds great. Let's see if we can publish that.
Well, John, tell people where actually before we start wrapping up, you have so much work. You've dabbled in so many different areas of comic creation. I wouldn't say, you may disagree. Some of your early work's probably indie, but you know, much more hit mainstream now. So for the indie creator out there who's trying to get started, trying to take their idea for a book from idea to reality, what's one piece of actionable advice for them?
I would say make it. Don't let anyone give you permission to make stuff. You know what I'm saying? You can make things, like I said, because of access, because of the democratization of tools for making, you can do that. One of the things I saw over the pandemic was how like people like yourselves like started up shows and things like that, build an audience, you know, because a lot of times you're taking this to like a bigger publisher. They're gonna like, okay, well, one of the first things they look at is like how many followers you got, like what other things are you making? Because I feel like if you're a maker, then you're gonna make stuff regardless. You know, you're gonna publish it anyway because you got to, right? That's the nature of comics. Because once you get the comics bug, it's over with. You're done for. You know, so yes, I would say that's the thing. Like, you know, when it's safe, go to conventions. You know, try to find a tribe. You know, try to find people to give you feedback. You know, honestly, like. Yeah, try to get people to pick things up, because I have to say, like, the thing that opened the door for me and Damien to talk to Sheila it was also the fact that I had the artwork that she could see that I had been making work, but it was when I showed her what I had already done, right? When I showed her like, this is Black comics. Imagine like that's your calling card. It's like, look at this. And she's like, yo, this is, her whole demeanor shifted. It went from like, oh, who is this person, to like, oh, wait a minute, tell me more, right? And yeah, because basically if you show that someone is willing to take a chance on you, whether it's like, you know, indie or whatever, like try to get into anthologies, start an anthology, you know, that kind of stuff too, you know. Be active, always be proactive. You know, there's nothing stopping you from putting out work now, nothing, you know, because now you got like Tapas, right? You got Substack, you got like, you know, Comixology, you can put, Amazon. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from being a publisher and building an audience. It takes a lot of time though. It's going to take you a while, you know, but if you're stubborn and, you know, crazy like we are, I mean, it's seriously like don't quit your day job. That's the other thing too. But what I will say is you're not going to necessarily, unless you get like some kind of publishing deal or something, you're not going to get rich doing it. Even with a option, a lot of times, you know, the option is really not as much money as you think. And then if they do make something out of your IP, that's when the dividends could start rolling in, right? But at the same time, I would say try to make all the things you do about the thing that you want to do. You know, what I mean by that is like every aspect of what you're doing should feed into your passion. You know, that's one thing I've been really fortunate, you know, to do, because all my teaching, all my cultural activism, because I look at myself as a cultural activist, because I try to like open doors for people, create conventions, you know, give people advice, you know, about how to do this. And also, like, my own work, it all feeds into the same thing, and what happens is, like, it starts to build this presence, and that's what happens. So yeah, because now, I guess I've been at this for like about 20 years or so now, which is crazy to say, but and I'm just now getting to the point where, like, I'm dipping my toe into the mainstream, it's weird. So
Mest Comics on Instagram just said, that's right, we don't do it for the money, but some money is nice.
Money's nice. Money's nice if you can get it.
We have a couple guesses on the show you were talking about. Gerald Boney says The Alienist.
That's right. The Alienist. I knew I was going to call it The Intuitionist. I said, no, that's the Colson Whitehead book. No. Yeah, but I knew it was something. The Alienist, that's the book. So imagine The Alienist and, like, Penny Dreadful.
Smashed.
But drawn by Jeremy Love.
That's amazing.
But written by Coach Anderson. So, but she now has to. His script is amazing, but he has to cut like 50 pages. It's crazy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, he's such a talented writer. I don't know if his stuff is. I can't believe I know him. Like, he's one of my favorite folk, and I'm like, yo, he's so talented.
Well, it has been an amazing evening, John, talking to you. I know you're not feeling well, and we are 6 minutes over the time I'm shooting to end. So I have to get better at time management.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate it.
No, thank you. And tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can find you. You have a website, you have social media channels. Tell everybody about that.
Yes. So my website is just John Jennings Studio. That's all one word, johnjenningsstudio.com. You can find me on Twitter at JIJennings, and on IG, on Instagram, or as the young folks say, the gram. Or do they still say that? I have no idea.
I don't know.
The gram. You can find me at John Jennings Art, and those are probably the primary space. And I'm on Facebook, and I don't know what that thing is for Facebook, but yeah, you can find me there too. But the other ones, I'm always on one way or the other, promoting things and procrastinating.
Well, thank you, John, so much for being here tonight. I deeply appreciate it. It's been an honor for me to be able to sit here and just talk with you for an hour about comic books.
Thank you.
And we're definitely going to get a Megascope Night Part 2 going. And you have definitely also reminded me that we need to get Dr. Duffy on sometime too.
You could just talk to Damien, because Damien is brilliant, and be awesome.
Yeah, so. I'd love to get him on. I'd love to.
Yep.
But thank you guys out there watching. Thank you. Go follow. If you haven't Googled The Hole yet by John Jennings and Damien Duffy, please do that. You're in for a treat. Maybe, or a nightmare. I'm not sure which.
Probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. We're back next Wednesday. Again, our first show in September. We're going to, fingers crossed, have Comics Wellspring on. They are an independent comic printer. And so we're going to be talking all things completely different gears. We're going to be talking all things printing comics next week, and the things you need to know as a creator about how to set up your book to print, and things that they see common mistakes of. So tune in next week for that discussion. John, once again, it's been an honor to have you on here tonight.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I was sick. So, I'm all right.
No apology necessary. I was telling you before the show, I think my son also came home sick today. So I don't have anything yet, so thank God. But it's probably coming, because once one falls in the family, we all fall.
Yes, that's how it goes. It's crazy. Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you. All right. Everybody out there watching, we'll see you next time.